The coming of Opukahaia and other young Hawaiians to the continent had awakened a deep Christian sympathy in the churches and moved the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions, the ABCFM, to establish a mission in Hawaii. Opukahaia was a student at the Foreign Mission School. He became caught up in this religious revival and was being groomed to be a key figure in a mission to Hawaii, to be joined by Samuel Mills Jr., who helped found the ABCFM. Opukahaia never made it back to the islands. He died in Cornwall, Connecticut on February 17, 1818, and several months later Mills died at sea off West Africa. Hiram Bingham noted, visiting the Foreign Mission School during a vacation of the Theological Seminary at Andover and feeling a new impulse to become a pioneer in the enterprise of spreading the gospel in that portion of the Pacific Isles. I freely offered myself to the American Board for that purpose and was accepted by their Prudential Committee in the summer of 1819. Soon after, Mr. Thurston, my classmate, offers himself for the same work and was likewise readily accepted. The mission to Hawaii was formed in Park Street Church in Boston, Massachusetts. The Prudential Committee of the ABCFM, in giving instructions to the missionaries, said, "Your mission is a mission of mercy, and your work is to be wholly a labor of love. Your views are not to be limited to a low, narrow scale, but you are to open your hearts wide and set your marks high. You are to aim at nothing short of covering these islands with fruitful fields and pleasant dwellings and schools and churches and of Christian civilization. You will never forget Opukahaia. You will never forget his fervent love, his affectionate counsels, his many prayers and tears for you and for his and your nation." In 2019, the bicentennial of the departure of the missionaries, Park Street Church reminded us of the connection Hawaii shares with Boston. 200 years ago, on October 23, 1819, the Pioneer Company of Missionaries departed aboard the Thaddeus from the Long Wharf in Boston. On board were Hiram and Sybil Bingham, Asa and Lucy Thurston, Samuel and Mary Ruggles, Samuel and Mercy Whitney, Elijah and Maria Loomis, Thomas and Lucia Holman, Daniel and Jerusha Chamberlain, and their 5 children, Dexter, Nathan, Mary, Daniel Jr., and Nancy. Also on board were 4 Hawaiians as part of the mission, Hopu, Kanui, Honoli, and Humehume. The Thaddeus was a trading ship, 85 feet long and about 25 feet wide. She was captained by Andrew Blanchard and First Officer James Honeywell. Honeywell eventually set up shop in the islands. Well, after he was gone, his company eventually became Sea Brewing Company. The missionaries were not sailors. After nearly 2 weeks at sea, the journal entry of one of the missionaries, Lucia Holman, on November 6, 1819 notes, "Our seasickness came on, and before morning every passenger except the 4 native youths were broadside. I need not attempt to describe the horrors of seasickness, for I believe it is well understood by most of you. However, to make the best of us, we were a pitiable company. I think here was an exception to the saying that misery loves company, for I believe the miseries of one was no consolation to those of another." 1 month out of Boston, on November 23, 1819, they were still headed east. To get around South America, it is more efficient to not fight the currents and rather sail with the prevailing winds. The Gulf Stream parallels the eastern coastline of the U.S. It is a strong northward current. In addition, like the Pacific, the Atlantic Ocean has trade winds. Prevailing winds cross the north portion of the Atlantic and then head southward past Africa. They never stopped along the way from Boston to Hawaii, and there were occasional moments of excitement, as on their 48th day at sea, December 9th, 1819, as noted in Samuel Whitney's journal. Kind of providence has this day interposed and saved us from an awful death. The lightnings of heaven have played about us for several hours, accompanied by most tremendous peals of thunder. One flash struck the main topmast, but did no essential evil. Had it found its way to the magazine, which contains upwards of 5,000 pounds of powder, more than 40 souls must instantly have been in the world of spirits. A regular daily system had been strenuously recommended to all. Each day started with private and family devotions at about 5:30 to 7:30. From 7:30 to 9 there was breakfast and recreation. 9 to 1, the study of theology. 1 to 2:30, dinner, recreation, and private devotion. 2:30 to 6, study of the language, miscellaneous reading and writing. From 6 to 8, supper and exercise. From 8 to 9:30, private and family devotions. 9:30 to 5:30, sleep. They didn't know it at the time, but on their 80th day of sailing, they were at the halfway point on January 10th, 1820. You can see the deviation of their course. They had just experienced about a week of storms. On day 102, February 1st, 1820, they rounded Cape Horn. There was a bit of excitement on their 141st day, March 11th, 1820. The ship's journal notes, "We had this day special occasion to acknowledge the kind providence of God. About 1:00 p.m. there was a calm, and several of the brethren and some others, having been denied the privilege many weeks, allowed themselves to enjoy the pleasant and healthful exercise of bathing in the ocean. Not long after they were safely out, while one of the sailors was employed in painting the bowsprit, with his feet in the water, a common-sized shark was seen to approach him. Had he not been seasonally warned to avoid the monster, he might have lost a limb, if not his life. The shark then played, or rather raved, around the brig with the boldness and fierceness of a hungry tiger. They caught the shark, and on opening the shark, there were found a porcupine fish and a large beef bone, which had been thrown overboard by the cook at the time the brethren were bathing, so that he could not have been far distant at that time. On their 160th day out of Boston, March 30th, 1820, they reached the islands. The journal notes, "Let us thank God and take courage. Early this morning the long-looked-for Hawaii Island and the cloud-capped and snow-covered Mauna Kea appear full in view to the joy of the animated multitude on board. We are now coasting along the northeast part of the island, so near the shore as to see the numerous habitations, cultivated fields, smoke rising in different parts, fresh vegetation, rocks, rivulets, cascades, trees, etc. And with the help of glasses, men and women, immortal beings purchased with redeeming blood. We are much pleased, not to say delighted with the scene, and long to be on shore." Here is Samuel Ruggles' art of his viewing as he was passing along the Hamakua coast. The Thaddeus Journal entry, March 30th, 1820, 4 p.m. They passed Maui on the right, having turned the northern extremity of Hawaii Island. Captain Blanchard this afternoon set off a boat to make inquiries respecting the king, etc. Mr. Honeywell, a mate, Hopu, Humehume, and others went nearly to the shore and fell in with 10 to 12 native fishermen in their canoes, who readily gave them the important information that the aged King Kamehameha is dead, that Liholiho his son succeeds him, that the images of his gods are burned, that the men eat with the women in all the islands, that one chief only was killed in settling the affairs of government, and he for refusing to destroy his gods, that Liholiho the young king and Kalanimoku both reside at Hawaii Island. Our hearts do rejoice, though we are disappointed in not being allowed to preach Christ to that venerable chief. And though we believe we shall have trials enough to give exercise to faith and patience, yet our hearts do rejoice to hear the voices of one crying, "In the wilderness prepare ye the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for your God." They were becalmed nearly 24 hours. Here is an illustration of what Kawaihae looked like at the time. On March 31st, Mercy Whitney wrote, "Early this morning, one of the officers and several men went to shore to invite the head chief and his lady to come and see us. The men and boat have returned and brought some of the productions of the island, such as sweet potatoes, breadfruit, plantains, coconuts, sugar cane, etc. I relish none except the coconut." Brother Ruggles was one who went ashore. They went to the house of the chief and were treated with great kindness and hospitality. The best of the house afforded was set before them. The natives eat their poi made of taro with their fingers, but perceiving Brother Ruggles chose not to eat in such a manner, they got him a spoon made of ivory. It is not clear why, but the missionaries stayed around Kawaihae for a few days. A journal entry on April 1st, 1820 notes, "Today Kalanimoku and the two widows of Kamehameha, several other chief women, decently dressed, came on board the brig, having sent before them a present to Captain Blanchard of 3 hogs and 3 or 4 large bundles of sweet potatoes. This noble chief, after being introduced to the mission family individually, and after the mutual salutation of shaking hands with the compliment, 'Aloha,' sat down with us to dine and appeared with great civility." An April 2nd, 1820 journal entry notes, "Lord's Day. This morning Captain Blanchard and Brother Bingham visited Kalanimoku, and with him the most celebrated heiau of the islands. It was built by Kamehameha, who himself laid the cornerstone. It stands on the brow of a hill, fronting the seashore. Pu'u kohola heiau." Then they sailed for Kailua-Kona, where Liholiho, the new king, was living. On April 2nd, Kalanimoku, Kalakua, and other Hawaiians sailed from Kawaihae to Kailua with the missionaries on the Thaddeus. At 8 p.m. on April 3rd, they were off of Kailua-Kona. Samuel Whitney notes in his journal on April 4th, "We are now anchored for the first time since we embarked. Brothers Bingham and Thurston went on shore and conversed with the king on the subject of our introducing the gospel. He appeared pleased, but he could give us no decisive answer about landing." Then on April 11th, the Thaddeus journal notes, "Brother Bingham, being somewhat exhausted with the long continued negotiations and seriously indisposed today. Brother Thurston and Dr. Holman went on shore to hear the result. The decision of the government is that 2 of the brethren with their wives and 2 of the native youths should remain here and be furnished at the public expense with lodgings, water and fuel, and with fresh provisions, and allowed to commence their work with the promise of protection, and that the rest of our number should be allowed to proceed to Oʻahu and there be accommodated with convenient homes. We were told that if we did not do them good, they might send us all away. As it is the pleasure of the king that the doctor should remain with Hopu and Kanui, it was easily agreed on among ourselves and settled thus far. It was also easily agreed that one of the ordained ministers should be designated to remain. The question, which one of the two, was decided by ballot, and Brother Thurston was appointed to occupy this important post, to our mutual satisfaction.